Please let us welcome Javier Palomarez. Yeah, right here. This one.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
So from, where were you yesterday?
Yesterday, I was in Austin, Texas, and then I woke up this morning in Dallas and missed 2 flights, and gracias a Dios, made it here. Thanks for having me.
And he was in San Diego last Thursday.
I was in San Diego last week, yeah.
At the University of San Diego. So thank you, Javier, for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be back.
So we're going to talk about leadership. And if we Google it, the meaning of leadership is going to be very straightforward. But we want to hear from you, Javier. What is the meaning of leadership from your perspective?
Well, you know, I never, as you know, because you know me well and you're getting to know me even better. I never set out to be a leader. I didn't wake up and decide today I'm going to lead. I wanted to make a difference. And 9 years ago, I walked into an organization that was over $1 million in the red. We had 32 days of life left. We had a bloated staff. We had 20 corporate sponsors, and the brand was in deep trouble. And I don't know if people followed our organization at that time. And so I was coming off 20 years of corporate life, and I thought, you know, I'm going to relax a little bit. I'm going to spend time doing the things I love to do. And it occurred to me that when I would hear about my community, I would always hear that we're broke, we're uneducated, we need help, we're all immigrants, high teen pregnancy rate, high school dropout rate through the roof. And no one was talking about my community in the context of we're also business owners. We pay taxes, we drive innovation, we create jobs. We're growing at a rate of 3 to 1 when compared to the general market. We're the secret sauce of the American economy, but no one was talking about our community in that way. And so I wanted to make a difference, and I decided I'm going to give voice to this community. And we went about getting busy and getting that done. Today, the association is flush with money. We have cash. We have plenty of it in the bank. We went from 20 corporate sponsors to 272 corporate sponsors. We walk into the White House whenever, however, and if ever we want. We have been on Air Force One. We have been in conversations with international heads of state. We work with senators, congressmen, ambassadors, wannabe presidents, former presidents, current presidents, never going to be presidents, used to be president. And so if that is leadership, then call it what you want. But I didn't set out to be a leader. I set out to make a difference. I set out to give my community of Hispanic business owners, job creators, and innovators a voice. And if people want to refer to that as leadership, so be it. But it wasn't my intent to be a leader. I think if you're out to be a leader for the sake of being a leader, then don't do it, because you're not helping anyone but yourself. Leadership is not about Facebook posts. Leadership is hard. Leadership is hard. You have to make tough decisions. Oftentimes you make decisions that you know will be criticized. You make decisions that you know people will be uncomfortable about. But that is your job as a leader. If you're going to be a leader, then damn it, lead. That's the way I see it anyway, for what that's worth.
That's a good one. So we know that a lot of folks can or pretend to become leaders, and they go through the process of training, you know, to become a leader and stuff, but it's not natural in some people, you know. Mm-hmm. So my next question to you is like, what are some of the trainings and Did you have a mentor, coaches? We have some personal coaches here. Did you went through that process, like when you started like facing all these challenges at the USACC and probably in some of your previous jobs? Did you reach out to some folks for help and stuff?
Yeah. I think the one thing that I've always done that has helped me, again, I think leadership is mostly innate, but you can develop skills and hone skills that allow you to be a better leader when you're put in the position. But the one thing I've always done is I've surrounded myself with mentors. And a mentor, by the way, is not somebody whose job it is to make you feel good about yourself. A mentor tells you the truth, unvarnished truth. And mentors challenge you, they guide you, they protect you, they pick you up when you fail. And I failed many, 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 many times. But I've surrounded myself with mentors. And one of the things that I've done that's a little bit different from some other people that I know is that I've kept some of the mentors that were my very first mentors, that when I first, kind of in my adult life, I've maintained those relationships. And of course, I've developed more mentors as I've evolved and gotten older, and you know, my world has moved on. But I've always also maintained the original mentors that know me, they know my characteristics, they know my flaws, my strengths. And so I find that being surrounded by mentors that tell me the unvarnished truth about today you really screwed up and let me tell you why. And I never, it doesn't matter what time of the day it is, it doesn't matter where I am, what I'm doing. If one of my mentors calls me, I pick up the phone because I know they're calling me to tell me something that matters. And so the one thing I've done that has really truly helped me is I've surrounded myself with mentors that truly care about me and tell me the truth about my performance, no matter what the circumstances are.
You know, we have been in business for 10 years now. And one of the things that I really focused on since day one, it was personal development. I knew that if the Hispanic Chamber of E-commerce could make a difference in the community, it was through education, business seminars and stuff. So a lot of our members know that we haven't invested that much time in like mixers and that kind of stuff, you know, because for me it was just a waste of time from my personal perspective. So being that said, the Javier Palomarez went through a lot of like trainings and programs where you invested in your personal development besides the mentors.
Yes, I think all of us have. By the way, I don't want to pass up the opportunity to tell all of our friends here that you're one of my mentors and that I look to you for your guidance and counsel, and that I think that you are doing an amazing job, man. There's one reason I'm here. This is the reason I'm here. Because I'm almost 60 years old, man, and I haven't gotten off the plane. And there's one reason I'm here, and this is the reason I'm here, because I think you're doing an amazing job, and it is our job, the old guys, the old guard. We need to help the up and coming leaders as much as we possibly can, and I don't want to pass up the opportunity to tell you that I think you are doing an amazing job. California. The Hispanic community in California should be an absolute powerhouse. Yes. There is no reason why in this state Latinos don't rule the roost. It is a travesty, it is a shame, and I for one will do everything I can to make sure that we can change that. There was a certain CEO in this state 3 or 4 years ago in Silicon Valley that talked about her great new board. They had split the company in two. And that CEO put out a press release to announce this amazing board, the most diverse board in the technology world. And I read the names of the members of that board. 4 African Americans, a couple of Asians, and everybody else was white. There wasn't a single Latino on that list. In California. I called that CEO and I said, you are in a district, you are in a part of the country that is 42% Latino. How in the hell can you tell me that you are diverse? Your definition of diverse is black or white. and there's nothing in between, and that is unacceptable. The clock is ticking. I'm your friend. I'm a businessman. I will be respectful, but this will change. For about 3.5, almost 4 months later, they announced they had added, they said, come talk to us. I flew all over God's creation, New York, here, all over the place. I brought them 6 names, 3 men and 3 women. They selected the woman, one of the women. About 4 months later, they made an announcement. They had added 1 more board seat, and it was a Latina. And they said, oh my God, we went to all kinds of, we've never moved so fast in our lives, blah, 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 blah. It's unbelievable, Javier. We moved heaven and earth to get it done. We've never done since. And I said, you know what? You're about 30 years too late. But that's cool, man. You got one. And I'm going to be watching. We need to put our foot down. Ya basta. Enough is enough. It's time for us to say, you want to be governor of this state? You want to be president of these United States? You better start paying it back, because we've been here. And particularly in a state like this, we need leaders like you who engage others, who are business people, who are elegant, who are willing to work to make things better. And so I don't want to pass up the opportunity to tell you that you're doing an amazing job, and I'm pleased. I'm exhausted, but I'm pleased to be here.
Thank you, Javier.
By the way, I just had some Coronado beer. I think it's Coronado beer. That's pretty good beer. Coronado Ale or something. It's a local beer.
I think that's the one that has all the title of it. So, you know, and Lisa can tell you if I'm lying or not, but
that's the real boss over there.
That's the real boss. It's Lisa. That's the leadership right there. But I have read and learned from very successful people in business that they have gotten to that point because of how disciplined they are and some of the rituals that they do and the habits that they have. What are some of the habits that Javier Palomarez have that we can know about?
I have 2 very strict rituals, and they are rituals. Exercise and prayer. I run 5 miles every day, and when I turned 55, I'm 57 now. When I turned 55, my lower back started giving me trouble. But I run 5 miles every day. For health reasons, I'll do yoga. I find that exercise allows me to focus. It allows me to really kind of prioritize my day. With my schedule, you know, I find myself running at 2 in the morning, midnight, 10 at night. I do a lot of travel. There's a lot of business meals, and nobody takes you out to dinner to eat a salad. They want to have a steak. Yeah. So, you know, it's midnight, you've had a steak, and you're running, you know, by yourself. But I find that exercise allows me to focus. It also allows me to sleep. I have terrible sleep patterns. On a good night, I'll sleep 4 hours. I usually sleep about 3. But exercise gets me exhausted enough that, frankly, I fall asleep. The other thing is prayer. I pray every night, the last thing I do, and I pray every morning, the first thing I do. Well, the first thing I do is my hands are here, my eyes where my legs are, okay, thank you, God, and then I pray. Prayer humbles you. It reminds you how blessed you are. It reminds you what is truly important in life. It humbles you, and it allows you to remember, it forces you to remember how insignificant you really are in the final analysis, in the scheme of things. And if you think about it, prayer is nothing more than an exercise in focus. It's an exercise in focusing on an issue or a thought process, and I give thanks, and I ask for forgiveness. Mostly more asking for forgiveness and giving thanks. But those are the 2 things that are kind of my ritual: exercise and prayer.
And prayer. That's pretty important for us to keep in mind, because oftentimes we believe that we don't have time to invest in ourselves, in our health and stuff. And if you really think about it, that's the main asset that we have as business owners. It's our health. And we have some friends here that take it like really serious, like my friend, my coach over here, and Hector. So it is important that, for all of us in this room, that we never neglect our health. If Javier, that is traveling all over the place, can still have 30 minutes or whatever minutes for your runs, I think it's important that we take some time to heal the toxins and the drama and the stress that we go through our life, right? Javier, we have in our membership, and a lot of them are not with us today because it's Easter week, so they prefer to be in Cancun than being with us today. But we have a very young demographic in our membership. So we have a lot of young Latinos and Latinas that are starting to take leadership roles in their companies and in their communities through their businesses and stuff. Any advice that you can give them based on your personal experience? Because I know that you started your career at a very young age. So is there any advice that you can give to those guys who are listening to us right now?
First I'd say thank you, because our Latino community needs so many more leaders. One of the things that is very discouraging to me at my age, I'm staring down the barrel of 60 now, and my journey has been a crazy and long journey. Started out in the fields. Impoverished, youngest of 10 kids. My father left when he was 6, and I'm glad he did. He was an abusive father, and he left my mother with 10 children, and I was the youngest of the 10. And my mother was a very educated woman, but back in the day, she was kind of the equivalent of a CPA. But back in the day, nobody was hiring Mexican CPAs, and sure as hell not a Mexican woman CPA. But she was very resourceful, and she was a leader. Muy elegante, despite the fact that we were dirt poor. And she said, I've got an asset. I've got 10 healthy bodies. We're going to go work. And so we became migrant farm workers. And I learned about leadership by observing my mother and watching her in how she would pump up her team and get us fired up about, today we're going to do this, and we're going to get this done, and we're going to save these pennies. And we lived in a one-room shack. It had a rope down the middle, and we would draw bed sheets across it, and the girls would sleep on one side and the guys on the other. We didn't have a kitchen. We had a butane tank with 2 burners on it. To this day, when I smell butane, I want to throw up, because everything stunk like butane. My clothes, my sheets, my hair, no matter what, everything smelled like butane. We didn't have running water. We didn't have electricity. If you went to the bathroom, you went outside, and there was a big, long, corrugated tin structure, and it had a plank, and it had 12 holes and no walls, and you sat down, and there's a guy sitting right there, and a guy here, and a guy there, and a guy there, and a guy there, and you did your business, and you walked out. If you wanted to take a shower, water came on at one point, and it turned off on the other, and it was 12 pipes. Water shot out of there. It wasn't warm. It was just water. And you did your business, and you got out, and then the next guy came in. And so I got to see leadership in many different environments, many different contexts. All the way to Air Force One, I'm sitting there with some of the greatest leaders in the world in the President plane. And there are things that I think are consistent among leaders. They engage people. They allow you to see something, and they have a vision, and they can inspire you to believe in that vision. And I'm discouraged sometimes because in our community, we don't have enough leaders. African American community has got, Oprah and Reverend Jackson and Reverend Sharpton and my dear friend Mark Morial and so many more leaders that will speak for that community and give it life and give it the impetus to move forward. And in my community, we lack it, and I wish we had more. So the first thing I would say to young leaders is keep it up, because we need you. We need you desperately. Second thing I would tell them is If servitude is below you, beneath you, then leadership is beyond you. If you can't serve, trust me, you can't lead. As a leader, your first job is to serve. And sometimes that means that you're going to get criticized, you're going to get challenged, you're going to be called every name in the book. Your job is to lead. It's not to get down in the pig pen and sling mud with everybody else. You have to be strong and you have to lead and just keep leading, even in light of odds that are 1,000 to 1. Si no tienes el corazón, don't even do it. Don't waste your time. But if you do, God bless you, and we need you. Our Latino community desperately needs leaders. And so that's the first thing I would say is thank you. And again, the second thing, if service and servitude are, if they're beneath you, then leadership is beyond you.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. And I think in San Diego, the demographic, the Latino demographic, not just in San Diego but in California, is skews very young.
Yeah.
So it's very important that they keep, those ideas in mind. Do you see any differences from the leadership that you need on a corporate setting? From like if you're working for Kaiser Permanente or SDG&E, Pedro, welcome, or the leadership that you need in the community. Like if you're a small business owner in Chula Vista here or Vista.
Mm-hmm. I do. I spent 20 years in corporate America, and in that environment, it's very much about structure and line and staff and authority, and it's very titular, and it's driven by a corporate culture that's established, and it's kind of like the military, and so it is a great environment to work in. It does wonders for engaging people, focusing people, getting the mission of that corporation done. But it is very specific. There are policies and procedures, and there's a culture that follows that process and pattern. In the nonprofit sector, in the small business environment, in the entrepreneurial world, it's much more nebulous. It's more about the ability to articulate a vision and then rally people around that vision and get them to follow that ideal or that vision. I used to talk to the young people that I worked with, and I was on the phone with them. Well, I was a little bit late right now because I was on the phone with one of them right now, and she was asking me about a couple things. And the thing about working in that kind of an environment, that's an entrepreneurial kind of a startup or nonprofit environment, is oftentimes in the role that we had at the chamber, it's not like Levi's. You create a pair of Levi's and you sell them and someone pays you for the Levi's. Or Budweiser, you create a beer and you sell a six-pack and someone pays you. They pay you for something and they get something. They can eat it, drive it, drink it, brag about it. And I used to tell the young people that worked with me, what do we have? You can't eat it. You can't drink it, you can't drive it, you can hardly brag about it. We sell a promise, we sell a vision. And so the ability to get people to believe in that vision and say, I'm going to pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars because I believe in this vision that you have and this thing that you've articulated, and I want to follow that. That's a little bit different kind of sale. It takes a little bit of work to get there. And that really, I think, really tests your leadership, your ability to articulate what that path and that vision is. And it's one thing to articulate it, which in and of itself is a challenge, then to get literally hundreds and thousands or maybe millions of people to follow that vision, that's quite a different task. And so I see a huge difference between a corporate kind of prescribed, documented, regimental kind of environment in the corporate and maybe military setting versus an entrepreneurial nonprofit setting where it's really more, nebulous, and it's about creating a vision and getting people to follow it.
I agree with you. And, on the internet, we're starting to see the creation of more vertical market places, kind of like us, and in many different levels. And I see this, like, especially here in San Diego, because San Diego County is a very spread out county, and it's big. So I have shared this thought with many of our members that they need to start playing a leadership role in the areas where they have daily activities. Because if someone can influence the community, it's at the local level. You know, the ones that are, you know, like for example, Yesenia in Escondido, she can influence her community by reaching out to young folks, helping out the chamber and stuff. So I like what you're mentioning, you know, the difference in leadership, because even at the local level, even in your block, you can become a leader in a very positive way.
And that is really where it matters. I mean, if change is going to happen in this country, and certainly if it's going to happen in our community, it will not be some guy sitting behind a desk in Washington, D.C. It will be people at the local level making the real decisions, creating the real jobs, actually paying the taxes that will change things for our country and for our community. I think the internet, I think technology, which is why I love what you're doing. I don't know if you stop and think about it, but the way I see what you're doing is you're giving voice to a community. We have amazing business people in our community. Pero, you know, you may have a business owner that has the best recipes for how to make carne asada, and he has 5 restaurants. Y a él que chingados le importa? You know, what does he know? But if you can teach him how to let the rest of the world know that, hey, I'm out here. If you want the best carne asada in Southern California, you need to come here. You know, and to be able to spark that and really begin to get the word out about our community, our talent, our drive, what we represent, deja tú, California or San Diego, what we represent for the country. Technology, I think, will be one of the elements that allows my community to finally break out and let the rest of the world know what we have to offer. One of my mentors is a leader of a huge corporation, and he's Jewish. And several years ago, we were looking at weighing in on gay marriage. And I had a board that was like, Javier, estás loco. What the hell do we care about gay marriage? We're a business organization. That's not a business issue. You shouldn't be involved in that. And I said, I beg your pardon. It absolutely is a societal, economic, and therefore business issue. The best and greatest asset that any corporation could ever have is its people. And if we all admit to ourselves that 10 to 12% of the people in any given company are gay, then why would we not try to engage and make sure we get the best out of everybody in our corporations? And so we do have an economic interest in making sure that all people, gay or not, feel welcomed and respected and supported in the workplace. So it is a business issue. Well, I couldn't get my board to agree, so I go see my mentor, and he sits me down, and we're like this, having coffee. And he says to me, Javier, when you think about the Jewish community, how many Jews do you think there are in the United States? And I said, hell, 5.5 million, maybe 6 million? And he goes, yeah, I agree. About 5.5 million. And he said, when you think about the Jewish community, what do you think? I said, you mean like top of mind? He goes, yeah, what's the first thing that comes to mind? I said, educated, well-moneyed, connected, influential, entrepreneurial, powerful, influential. And he said, yeah, that's what I think. He goes, yeah, I'm a Jew, but that's what I think. I said, I'm a Mexican, and that's what I think, and I'm a Catholic. And he said, and when you think about the Hispanic community, what do you think? He said, how many Hispanics do you think there are here? Yeah, it was maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I said, 55 million? He goes, yeah, like 10 times as many Jews, right? I said, yeah, about 55 million. And he said, honestly, when you think about the Hispanic community, what do you think? I said, disenfranchised, not powerful, not networked, not entrepreneurial. He said, you know what? That's what I think too. He goes, and that's a damn shame. He said, there are 10 times as many Hispanics as there are Jews in this country. Why isn't our president a Hispanic? He said, where are you from? I said, I'm from Texas. And he said, why isn't your governor Hispanic? Why isn't the governor of California Hispanic, or the governor of New York, or the governor of Florida? He goes, can you imagine, pardon my French, can you imagine if Hispanics got their shit together? You would run this country. And that's the reality, and that's the way others see our community. If they see it that way, why aren't we seeing it that way? And why aren't we doing the things we need to do now to change that tomorrow? I hope that makes sense. That's what I think anyway.
That's perfect.
I got one perfect right here.
Being honest.
I think the question is always, though, and I know in the back of my mind, you sit through talks like this and you wonder, when you said, why don't we have more leaders like the Oprah Winfreys and all of that? Why haven't we been able to achieve that? To me, it always goes back to what is it? What is it that we're not doing? What is it that we need to do? Here you have a room full of talented people.
Very.
What is it that we're missing?
Mm-hmm.
We're not uplifting each other.
And that leads me to the next question. That leads me to the next question, because on April 2017, there was this article that called Javier, or at least he said, saying that Javier Palomarez is not the Hispanic community's Martin Luther King Jr. And then,
Well, I'm not.
and my question is but following up on the comment that you just made, so were you trying to be the Hispanic community Martin Luther King Jr.?
No. So, to be clear,
Because he started to get a lot of visibility,
Yeah.
and then they started giving you that name in newspapers and stuff.
yeah. So let's set the record straight. And both of them were Latinos, by the way. Supposedly journalists. I was on an NPR program, and we were talking about the state of affairs in our political environment. And I said that I drew inspiration from Dr. Martin Luther King. And the journalist immediately said, "Oh my God, did you just compare yourself to Martin Luther King?" And I said, "No, I didn't. I said I draw inspiration from Dr. Martin Luther King." Pero ahí se olvídate. And then the guy here from California, Ruben Navarrete, yeah, I'd love to have a job like Ruben Navarrete. You sit on your ass and all you do is, you just pass judgment. That's your job. You just criticize that guy and criticize that one, and this one didn't do this right, and I don't like that guy's hair, and I don't like his politics. What a great job. Get off your ass and actually do something. Get in the ring, man. You're gonna fail, you're gonna fall on your face, you're gonna look like an idiot some days, but at least you're trying. I don't like people who sit on the sidelines and point and criticize. Those are the people who are the worst enemies of this community, and their favorite target is this community.
That's right.
And so therein lies the challenge that we have as a community, to your point, is that we don't have to worry about someone else putting us down. We'll take care of that all by ourselves. When we were working very hard to remove Steve Bannon from the White House, we were working very quietly with some people inside the White House and some very incredible leaders in the Senate. And everybody had a role, and my role was to wake up one day, las 5 de la mañana, and I began with NPR, the first program of the day, denouncing this man. And I said, he is the nexus of evil. He is a racist. He is a bigamist. He is the worst. And I said, but I'm a businessman. And here's how I see him from a business context. Steve Bannon is nationalist, and my businesses, the ones that I represent, recognize that 94% of the global market exists outside of the United States. So if my businesses are to continue growing, we must have access to foreign markets. And it does us no good to have a nationalist right down the hall from the Oval whispering in the president's ear, we shouldn't be working with other countries. We need to only focus on America and only American companies. I said, what they don't tell you is that when you look at companies that participate or engage in foreign trade, 98% of them are small businesses. The ones that don't have a voice, we're the ones that will be damaged the most if we go to that kind of view from the White House that says we will not do foreign trade. The ones that get hurt the most, us, especially businesses around this corridor doing business with a willing buyer south of the border. We do $1.5 billion of bilateral trade with Mexico every single day. That trade crosses our unwalled borders every day. It's the best damn deal America has ever made. If you were to look at the trade we do with Mexico nationally, $525 billion of trade with Mexico every year from this country to that one. 6 million American jobs depend on that bilateral trade. So a guy like Steve Bannon saying, to hell with Mexico, we shouldn't be doing trade with them, Mr. President, is an enemy of my community, beyond the racial implications from a business perspective. And so for us, it was important he get the hell out. And so we worked with others, began at 5 in the morning, and then 5:15, and then 6, and then 6:15, 6:45, 7 in the morning, all day long. I must have done 18 programs calling for his removal. It finally happened like 48 minutes before I got a text from a very important young lady inside the White House. She said, turn on CNN. And I turned on CNN, and the next thing you know, the announcement of Steve Bannon stepping away from the White House. And I thought, what a great move. I was later talking to a member of the White House, and we were talking about this issue, the Hispanic community and minority communities in general. But that individual who was not Hispanic said to me, you know, your community doesn't need Steve Bannon's or Stephen Miller's. Your community does fine beating itself up. And you know, that's a hard thing to hear. You know, I was 56 at the time, and I wanted to punch that guy. But I have to admit, that's the truth. And so until we get past that, and we're able to cope with this notion that it's okay for some of us to want to lead, we should support each other. Reminds me of the old story of the Mexican crabs. You heard the story of the Mexican crab? It's that syndrome that we still somewhat suffer from. And, you know, es una lástima. It really is, because the only people we're harming is us.
You know, when I started the Hispanic Chamber of E-Commerce back in 2008, we became a target, you know, because we were making some people uncomfortable because of our work.
Yeah.
And when I was about to, you know, throw the towel and say, like, you know what, it's not worth it, I was telling my wife, why am I investing all this money out of my personal money, and then dealing with all these people who just want to take me down, they don't get it. Then I met a few folks, you know, like Manny Aguilar, Fabian Torres, Gabriel Cabañas, some folks that came to me and said, like, hey, bro, like, there are 43,000. Well, at that time there were 36,000 Hispanic-owned businesses, and there is only like a handful of them who are attacking you. So do your job, we will do our job, and then we'll let the community speak by itself.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why we're here celebrating 10 years, and we have this incredible group of members that are part of the Hispanic Chamber of E-Commerce. So I agree with you that, you know, like, there are a lot of people with that negative energy that if you start doing better than them, then you become a target.
Yeah.
But there are also folks like the ones that are in this room today.
La buena gente.
Yeah. And you have to work with them, you know, you have to make a difference with the ones that have that positive energy, that vision to make things better for all.
And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take people like you who say, you know, enough is enough. You know, this is a big country. There's opportunity for everybody. I follow and I talk to my sons constantly about, you know, a lion doesn't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. Be a freaking lion. Get it done. Don't worry about what other people are going to say. Porque al fin del día, believe me, they'll find something wrong. La corbata, el pelo, whatever. They'll find something to criticize. Just go do your deal. You know.
El pinche pelón de Taide.
Taide, what kind of name is that? ¿Qué tipo de mexicano? ¿Qué trae de mexicano?
Like, well, you know, they don't pay my bills, so they can go and take a loan right down to Tijuana. Everything hasn't been like peaches and cream in your life, Javier. So what are some of the mistakes that you have made?
Mal. We don't have that kind of time, brother.
Just give us the top 3.
I can't give you one of them in public. What mistake haven't I made? Probably a recurring mistake is this notion that that people can divorce their personal agendas and their personal feelings from the mission. And it's very difficult as a leader sometimes when you're leading a group of people that are different. My teams, I like to make my teams as diverse as I can. A former chief of staff of mine was an openly gay man, and he was Jewish and he was white. So the whole world was like, oye, por favor, it's the Hispanic chamber, come, chinga. But I wanted that different perspective. My chief of staffs were oftentimes women because I wanted a perspective that was different. I don't think I ever hired anybody who looked, acted, and thought the way I do, because one of me is probably enough. We don't need more than that. And so I surrounded myself with people who saw the world very differently, and many of them were millennials, which is a whole different deal. And so the challenge for somebody of my vintage that came up, the era that I came up, is divorcing my own personal perspective, my own personal ideology from the mission, and making sure that everybody else's personal biases and political perspectives and political ideology and their views are while they're important, the number one challenge needs to be the task at hand, the mission of the company, the organization, the movement. And so it's really staying focused on what's the right thing to do for the mission, for the company, for the organization, for the movement, not your agenda and your agenda and your agenda, because that's where things begin to fall apart. It is a recurring challenge, I think, that all leaders have. And so for me, it's one of the mistakes that I've made in the past, and to this day I struggle not to make it now. The other mistake really is more, particularly with younger people today, it's a new generation, and their perspective and life and work balance is totally different than mine. To begin with, when I grew up, there was no internet. So you were in the office at 6 in the morning and you left at 7 at night, and everybody was watching everybody else to make sure that you were putting in the hours. Half the time you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs half the time. Today, you've got millennials that don't even come into the office. They stay in their pajamas and do their work, by the way, exceptionally well, using technology. And so there's that millennial kind of perspective that, as a guy, again, nearing 60, it is a challenge for me. And so those are probably 2 examples of kind of where it is. And then finally, for me, it is an unwillingness to put up with bullshit. And the older I get, it's funny, the less I'm willing to put up with it. I tell the people that I work with, I have less days ahead of me than I do behind, and I'm not going to waste them listening to your crap right now. So let's get. But sometimes you do. You need to be able to take a deep breath and hear people out and make sure that even though your experience and your expertise and your years tells you otherwise, you have to give people the opportunity to voice their opinion and then get them back on track. But those are a few of the things that I, to this day, struggle with.
We know, Javier, that when you took the USACC under your leadership, the chamber was in a really bad shape. Mm-hmm. And you had to deal with a lot of different groups internally. Mm-hmm. So in that process, how challenging it was for you to find a common path for the USACC to get to where it is right now. And as a follow-up question to that is like, what do you think that it happened? Because I'm just gonna tell you from a chamber leader perspective, because you know that I was part of all the round tables and all the chamber leader calls and stuff over the last 5 years. And the majority of us were extremely pleased with your job. And all of a sudden, you became a target of a group, and then they start attacking you. But you were giving us, the Hispanic business community, you were giving us visibility at the national level. And for us, that was really good, because even in San Diego, that visibility, it had a trickle-down effect. And it was a positive visibility for our chamber and many other chambers across the country. So what do you think that it happened, or like, what did you do wrong to get to that stage?
I think that, you know, as a community, we struggle. 100% of the people who attacked me were Hispanic. And it typically boiled down to a political agenda or a personal agenda. The tough part about being a leader, particularly at a time when the community is transitioning, is that you're going to say things that are unpopular. You know, one of my closest mentors was my oldest brother. When he came back from the war, he had gotten this great thing called the GI Bill. Had afforded him an opportunity to go to college, and he was the first one in my family, and then that afforded him an opportunity to buy a house. And our first house, was $12,700, and it was on Hill Street, and so it opened our eyes to what was possible, that you could have your own house. What a concept! And he passed away late last year. And I had the privilege of being able to take my sons, who are now grown men, to sit with him, literally his last few days. And one of my sons, out of the blue, said, you know, Tio Cande, you know, what advice would you give me? You know, I want to be a doctor, and I've gotten into medical school, and you know, and he said, he looked at me and he said, I'll give you the advice I gave your father when he was a little boy. He said, always speak the truth. Always insist on the truth, and never accept anything less from anyone around you. He said, and the truth is hard, but it's your job, it's your responsibility to speak the truth. And sometimes, particularly in a political climate like the one we find ourselves in today, speaking the truth can make you a target in our community, in many communities, certainly in this one. And so therein lies a big challenge that we have. And to that concept that I talked about a while ago, where people can't divorce themselves from their own political leanings and their own political ideology, and they forget the mission of the association and begin to think about their political ideology and how much they disagree with something you're doing. So let me give you a real example, because I like to give real examples so it becomes a little clearer. When this president was a candidate and he was running to be president, there wasn't a Hispanic leader that attacked him more than I did. There wasn't an association that attacked him harder than we did. I called him a payaso on Morning Joe. I said he was a buffoon on Fox and Friends. I said he was a clown. I said he was an idiot. I said he had neither the talent nor the temperament. And by the way, he proved me right on every point. Not that I mean, I just want to remind you. And so we fought him very, very, very hard. So here's a couple of truths. When we knew we were going to win, we were certain that our candidate was going to win. We began to say on the air, Donald Trump, you have to honor this election. You have to honor the will of the people, and you have to respect the outcome. You have to respect the results of the election, because we knew we were going to win. And lo and behold, 1,000,000 to 1, he won. And I went on Fox and I said, I have to be big enough to do exactly what we asked him to do. And now I have to respect the will of the people. I have to respect the results of this election. I have to honor this election. That is the American way. And there were many people in my community that never forgave me for that, and from that day forward have made a point of denouncing every single thing I did, beginning with some of these supposed journalists. I never thought it would happen. I fought like hell for it not to happen. The very people that criticize me now were the ones who were sitting on their ass and never got on the air and said, this guy's a clown, this guy's an idiot, this guy shouldn't win, we shouldn't have him here for these reasons. But they continue to be on the sidelines and continue to denounce, continue to criticize. Those are the enemies of this community. Those are the people who will do us the most harm. A mí que me importa, look, the reality of it is, whether we like it or not, 32% of the Hispanic population that voted for that man. And I may not like it, I may not agree with it, but they're not any less American than I am. They're just as much an American as I am, and they have as much right to their opinion as I have to mine. That is the American way. If you don't like it, then get another guy in there and get off your ass and go vote and do the things you need to do to replace him. But he is the President of the United States, and sometimes es un payasísimo ese cabrón. Pero al fin del día, ¿sabes qué? That's the job. That's the job I signed on to do. Did I like it? Come on. But that was my job. And my job was to do my job, and I did my job. And so when we felt that we had to work with the administration, we had to work with the administration. No nos queda remedio. That's your job. If you can't do it, then by God, step down and let someone else do it. That's part of what the challenge was, at least in my situation. I also spoke the truth. I'm a Democrat, a lifelong Democrat. And I probably won't change. And I voted for Barack Obama twice. But I went on national television and said, you know what? Barack Obama, as much as I love him and respect him, he deported more people than the 43 presidents before him combined. And at the height of his deportations, 98% of the people being deported were Hispanic. You almost had to be Hispanic to get deported. Those are the facts. And if we as a community continue to live without the facts, we damage ourselves. The best way to lead, the best way to get better and stronger as a community is to understand the facts, talk about them openly, deal with it, and then go on from there. But it is very convenient for both sides, by the way, on the right and the left, to try to varnish it and make it something it's not. We, as a community of educated business drivers, need to educate ourselves on the facts, and then from then make our decisions. And so the danger, I think, that I see right now is that let's face it, our community we're under fire and we're in duress, and it's a very difficult time. We've been attacked. And part of the reason we got attacked is because we don't have an Oprah. We don't have a Reverend Jackson or a Reverend Sharpton to say, call bullshit and challenge somebody who challenges us. When somebody was looking for a whipping boy, we were the most convenient one. And guess what? It didn't do a damn thing. There was nobody to fight back. What did we do? We fought amongst each other. Instead of fighting the real enemy, it's easier to pick on each other. And that's the problem with our community. That's my opinion, by the way, but I think that's the challenge that we have. And sometimes when you step out there and you do what you were hired to do, which is lead and tell the truth, you become a target.
So if you had a magic wand, how would you fix that?
I wouldn't. Oh, fix it or change it?
Change it.
How would I change? I wouldn't change a thing. My job was to tell the truth. My job was to lead
No,
as best I
I mean,
could.
how would you change the destruction we cause amongst ourselves?
The community? Oh, God.
If it's a problem, you're a leader, how would you lead us to fix it?
You know, I think, again, doing things like this, where we have a truth session and we face the facts. One of the things that I did a lot is that I got out of the bubble. I have a home in Washington, but Taiben knows this, and my staff would tell you that I spent maybe 4 days a month. I'd go maybe twice to Washington. I spent most of my time out on the road, talking to business leaders, talking to community leaders, talking to the people who are paying the taxes, driving the jobs, creating the innovation, you know, driving our economy. And 9 times out of 10, they saw it the way I did. Nobody votes entirely Republican or entirely Democrat anymore. You vote on the issue, you know, and things change, and you know, it's not hard line. But when you go to Washington, you're either completely on the right or you're completely on the left. And anybody who dares try to work with the other side gets demonized. I remember, as we were talking earlier, I remember when I was a young man, we valued an ambassador or a senator or a congressman who could work across the aisle and bring somebody over to their way of thinking. Today, if a congressman tries that, he'll get denounced. He'll get replaced in a heartbeat. And that's not the way it should be. That's not the American way. And we've gone to a place where we need to change that. So that's one of the things I would do, is I would begin to reward those members of Congress that are willing to cross the aisle to work with someone else. It's too easy now to get all bought in on one side or the other, and rarely does one side have all the answers. In my opinion, rarely does one side have all the answers. The second thing I would do is I would begin to challenge those who sit on the sidelines and point fingers and criticize. I'm discouraged that anytime a Latino tries to lead and fails, that it's usually a Latino supposedly journalist. I think they're gossip columnists more than anything. They pounce on that person.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't see Latinos running to save that person. In this state, there was a guy named Antonio Villaraigosa running for governor. Now, some would say he's not perfect. Hell, I'm not perfect. I don't know if any of you are, but if you are perfect, please raise your hand, because I want to meet you after this thing. But he led. And he got out there, and he made mistakes, but he led. He fell, and where the hell was the community to help him? We were pointing fingers. We were kicking him when he was down. There was a guy named Bill Richardson who fell. And where was our community? We were the first ones to denounce and to walk away in shame. There was a guy named Henry Cisneros. And I could go on, one after the other, after the other. There was a guy named Bill Clinton who had sex with a 19-year-old in the Oval Office. And we hold him up as though we've forgotten. Those are the facts. Am I making it up? Am I right?
Yes.
No. Am I right?
Yes.
Ahí está la diferencia. We don't have the will or the backbone to say, you know what? We'll criticize our own, but don't you dare touch him. He's one of ours. How many people in the African American community have fallen? But God help you if you go after them, because the African American community will embrace them, they'll pick them up, they'll dust them off, and they'll say, you're our leader. You're not perfect, but you're our leader. We may criticize you, but God help the other community that comes after you. We don't do that as Latinos. I think. I don't know if you agree with me, but...
We agree. Javier, that happens with orchestration. I've seen that happen with a lot of the projects that I'm involved with. When we get a bad review for business, our best customers or best fans go out and really annihilate the person that gave them the bad review, because it's usually someone that's an idiot, right? So we need to create those kind of people in that kind of community where we know, hey, someone of our own is getting attacked, we need to go and rescue them.
That's right. That's right.
It happens a lot. I mean, there's businesses, you're familiar with Logan, right? You are. There's businesses who are white-owned who try to enter Logan, and they're really good at attacking them so they don't start. But why don't we just use that the other way and actually helping the businesses do want to prosper, but that takes orchestration, right?
I agree. It does take a certain level of orchestration and sophistication and a willingness to accept that, look, we're not all perfect. I don't think any president that ever ran, certainly not this guy, said, hey, I'm perfect. I don't remember that ever being the case. They said, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to serve, or I'm going to do that, or I'm going to change this. And on the merit of what they claimed, they got elected. I think that as a community, we need to reach the level of sophistication where we have a mechanism that supports our own. And when they are under duress or attack, yes, we deal with it. We're honest about it. We fix and we course correct. But we shouldn't be the first ones to attack. We shouldn't be the first ones to pounce. We should be the first ones to come to the aid of our own, who were willing to step out and lead, in my opinion.
When the team works, the dream works.
That's
You gotta
right.
work together as a team.
That's right. That's right.
Ricardo?
Yeah, what I was going to say also is that I think that what we need is outreach. And for example, I see with the marches, like when we left the Paris Climate Accord, there was a march for sign. When the women's march, lately we saw
The young people in gun control.
against gun violence, and also we had when there's an African American, like you say, shot, there's Black Lives Matter movement has grown. Like, why hasn't there been a march for Hispanics that really make a bold statement that we won't no longer be
We won't tolerate
taking, you're building a wall or deporting hardworking Mexicans or trying to destroy NAFTA. We need like a real march to make a big statement. I don't know why it hasn't happened. And I don't know how it can start, but I think there's enough elements to make a big statement like the marches that we've seen that has already seen congressmen and senators change their views because of this pressure by constituents that now are forced in voting. So I mean, I don't know if that's, but I think that we're missing something.
I completely agree. I think there needs to be that trigger, that catalyst that finally brings our community together that says, ya basta, enough is enough. If this didn't do it, I honestly don't know what would. But I think there's hope yet for us. The first thing, what is it Shakespeare said? First kill the lawyers. In our case, I think we need to get rid of los criticones, because we have too many in our community that'll sit on the sidelines and criticize. And yet, as I would ask, well, when's the last time you stepped out on the ring? When was the last time you got your nose bloodied because you were in the fight? I always, and somebody quoted me, I said, I'd rather create change from the inside than whine from the outside. This world, this country, in the business environment, you play the hand that's dealt. Sometimes it's fair, sometimes it's not. But that's the hand that dealt, and you play that hand. And if you're not at the table, you can't play. If you're sitting on the sidelines, guess what? You're never going to be in the game, man. You've got to be at the table to be able to play. And sometimes that deck just doesn't seem to want to cooperate. They just keep dealing you a hand that isn't fair or that you can't win. Pero if you give up and walk off to the sidelines complaining, you ain't going to change a damn thing. But I agree with you. I think if we could find that issue that finally creates the catalyst where we band together and stand as one community with one voice, that would be amazing. I was here last week talking to a community of academics and business leaders and elected officials from Costa Rica, Argentina, España, Mexico, Colombia, Panama. And it is amazing how energized they were after the conversation that we had. I was just talking about our Hispanic community and what we mean to the history of North America, and I said, we are a community from many countries, but one culture. We are a community with many voices and many dialects, but one message. And they gravitated to that. You would have thought I was running for president of Panama, or Ecuador or something. And it's amazing to me how they gravitate to that, but in our own community, we won't gravitate to that. It's a real travesty, and I hope, like I said, I have less days ahead of me than I do behind. I hope I get to see that change while I'm still, young enough to recognize it, but I agree with you. We need that one thing that will spark and will get us up finally as one community with one voice.
Well, one last question.
Thank you for sharing your story. I think it's very inspiring to see from humbling beginnings all the way to flying with the President of the United States and heads of state. So what do you think was the fire that you had inside that kept you going all the way to the top? And how do you think we can keep that fire inside us and pass it on to younger generations?
Oh man, don't get me started on that. We were sharing earlier today a speech that somebody saw on the internet. I was in Philadelphia one night, and I was sitting with an old friend of mine, African American friend, and we were talking about how things have changed, and it was a beautiful setting. We were in Philadelphia. It was a black tie affair, and I had 3 different glasses for water. And there was a guy standing behind our table, and it's me and Harold Epps, and we're talking about, wow, man, the stuff we've seen, in our lifetime. And I said, that guy's job, he's got gloves on, is to ask us, what kind of water do we want? Do we want ice water, plain water? Do you want sparkling water, bottled water, tap water? You want Pellegrino? What do you want? And I'm like, la madre, 4 or 5 different choices of water. And they called me up to my speech, and I forgot all about my speech. And I said, I'm standing here, and I'm looking at this crowd, and everybody looks so beautiful. Everybody's so elegant. And I said, look at the silverware and the glassware in front of you at every table. It's glittering, it's gleaming from here where I look down at it. And I said, and I'm reminded, when I was a kid, we used to work in the fields, and the farmer's son would come up in a flatbed truck, and he had 2 big barrels that were open, and it had water in the barrel. And the truck is bumping around on a dirt road, and there's dust flying everywhere, settling in that water. And he would take a ladle, and he would dip the ladle in the water, and we would run to the water. This is before igloos and Yetis and coolers and all that stuff. And we were dying of thirst, and it was hot. And I was a little guy. And so as I was running, I would always trip and I would fall because the hedges, the rows were a little taller, and the men would jump over them easily. So by the time I got to the line for water, I was number 10, number 15, number 20 in a line of grown men and women who were standing there waiting for their water. And the farmer's son would dip the ladle in the water, and he would lower it down to somebody, and that person would drink it. And then the next person would walk up, and you'd take a nickel, and you had to put a nickel in the ladle. And he would raise the ladle up, take the nickel out with his dirty hands, and put it in his pocket. And he would dip it in the same water that the last person drank from, and lower it down, and you would drink it. And the next guy would come up and put a nickel in the ladle with his dirty hands. And the farmer would pick it up, take his dirty hands in the ladle, and back in the water. Same ladle. Hand after hands after hands. And to me, I was a little boy. It was like a game. I was excited. And I would take my nickel, and my mother, because my father had left us, would give me a nickel. And the man would bring the ladle down, and I was a little boy. I was thrilled to get a drink of water, and I put my hand in that ladle, and I was the 15th or 20th person. And he would take that ladle and dip it in that water again. Everybody else's saliva and dirt and everything else. And I would drink that water. And on a good day, my mother had 2 nickels, and she would give them to me so I could get a drink. Fast forward to that night, and the guy whose job it is to ask me, do you want bottled water, iced water, Pellegrino? What do you want? It's my glass. Nobody touches it. Nobody puts their hands in it. I saw that in my life. Many of us have seen that. I'm not alone. There's millions just like me who went through that struggle to be here today. There's nothing special about me. We're just worried about what comes next. Everything we went through to get here, we don't want to blow it. It's really up to you guys. We've done what we can and we'll continue to fight. But try to understand the journey that we've been through to get just to this point. And there's nothing special about Javier Palomarez. I don't have a special talent for numbers or anything. There are millions just like me that went through that struggle to put our community where it is right now. And we're depending on you to take us to the next level. That's where our community is right now, and I hope people won't forget what we went through to put us where we are. And there's so much more, porque tenemos las ganas, tenemos el talento, we can do it. Anyway, that's...
Thank you, Javier.
Happens every time. Happens every time. Happens every time.
I think it's been very powerful conversation for all of us. You know that I'm a little biased because I respect you and admire for everything that you have accomplished. And I think that we have to be extremely, extremely grateful for where we are right now. Not just here at the University Club, but at the stage that we're in our lives. We're healthy, we're running a business, we're contributing to our local economy. We have really good friends. I mean, many of you know each other in this room. And I think we still have a lot of potential to growth, not just personally, but professionally, and also as a group. Because every single person in this room, and the special guests that we have, that some of you invited today, can make a really positive impact in our community. And it doesn't take 43,000 Latinos to do it. Even only the 100 people that are in this room get together, help each other out, we can get really, really far together. So I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. And please, please, let's give Javier a big, big round of applause.
I'm proud of you. Very proud of you.